Welcome back. I'm Kim Baillie and you're listening to Talking in Public. Today I'm going to talk about how you prepare your speech. So it's all about preparation and a little bit about practice after you've done that preparation. 3 steps I want to go through with you first of all. Step 1, how long are you expected to talk? Step 2, what is the main point or points that you want to make in your speech? And step 3 is deciding on the appropriate style for the particular speech or talk that you're going to give. So let's go firstly to step 1. How long are you expected to talk? Now, if this hasn't been made clear to you, you need to find out. You can't prepare an open-ended talk and expect to be comfortable. In this situation, neither you nor the audience have a path to follow during your talk, and that leads to you losing your place in the talk, filling out the time with unnecessary or unrelated information, and then consequently losing the impact or the main points of your talk. Your audience will also lose track and let their minds wander if they've got no time frame in which to place the information that you're providing. Now, you relate that back to everything that you do in your daily life where you want information. You know that if you listen to a podcast, for example, we're going to tell you more or less how much time that's going to take, and you get that information from the provider of the podcast. If you watch a television show, if you watch a video, again, you're going to know how long it's going to take. So you look at that time frame and you decide whether you've got that time to allow to learn this particular task or to listen to this particular information, and your audience is no different. So if you haven't been told how long you've got to talk, then you need to find out how long you're expected to talk. If you ask and you get the answer that says, oh, it doesn't matter, just tell us what you think's appropriate, then you decide. You decide how long you need to talk, given what the situation is and what you think you need to convey in that particular talk. So, for example, if it's that you've been asked to address the board members on a project that you're part of, if you look at how long the board members are going to sit there, generally it'll be a day, sometimes 2 days for board meetings, the number of topics that they've got to cover, and then you look at what is a realistic time for you to expect them to listen to what you've got to say. You can't tell them everything about a project in one session. What you need to do is impart the really important things that you want them to understand at this particular presentation, and then work out how much time you need to allow for that. And in most cases, you're really not going to need more than 15 minutes, and 15 minutes is a long time when you're talking about one particular project, when they've got a whole lot of other things that they've got to cover in the day. You don't want to cut into the time and have them thinking, oh, how long is this going to go, because we've got to cover all these other topics in the day. There's so much more on the agenda. But you do want to take the opportunity to present your project in the best possible light. Same as if perhaps you've been asked to speak at a social function, and they'll say, I'll just get up and say a few words about so-and-so. Perhaps it's someone retiring or coming new into a project. Again, I wouldn't look at more than 10 minutes for that sort of activity. It really is about making it a good, punchy, quick introduction or speech that leaves people wanting more, because when they want more, they have been engaged by the talk that you've given. So that's probably enough on that. I have to follow my own rules. Step 2, decide on the main points and the number of them. So what's the point of this particular presentation that you're going to give? And I've got lots of templates and examples in the e-manual, the Kindle book that you can download. And all of those templates and those examples all talk about thinking about the areas of information that you could cover and breaking that down into points. Sort those points into a logical order of development. So start with the information that your audience may already know. Introduce the new ideas or develop existing information, and then finish with a summary. It's the classic, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. You can use that format in pretty much any speech you give, regardless of the length of time that you've been allocated to talk. But within that framework of telling them what you're going to tell them, and then telling them what you've told them, the middle section, the telling them, is where you're deciding on how many and what your main points are going to be. So that's step 2. Step 3 is deciding on the appropriate style for this particular talk. What you need to consider there is the topic of your talk, the occasion that you're presenting, and the audience. In another podcast, I'm going to talk about how you consider your audience when you're preparing your talk. So here I'll just talk about the topic and the occasion. So styles can be relaxed if it's a reflection of your natural communication style, but you shouldn't talk in public in an informal style. This conveys a lack of respect to the occasion, your audience and the topic. In some cases, your audience may also see it as a lack of preparation, which again reflects on their perception of how important you think the topic or the occasion to be. Now, this is very hard when you're used to conversing with the people that you're presenting to in a very informal manner. They might be your work colleagues, they might be your friends, they might be your relations. Any of those situations where you're used to interacting in a certain way, when you have to make a speech, when you are asked to make a speech, you need to think about the occasion as well as this audience. Yes, they know you well, and this is where many people fall into the classic problem areas of having inside jokes and not thinking that they need to prepare as much for a speech because it's an audience that they know, and it's just another occasion where I've got to talk to these people. They know me, so I don't have to do too much to prepare, and that's just so wrong on so many levels. I'm sorry to say. You need to prepare regardless of who you're talking to, how well you know them, how often you've spoken to them before. Preparation and thinking about the style is really important. As a classic example, there would be no point in me presenting these podcasts in a very formal style because you'll get bored. You don't know me well enough to know whether that's my style, and it's certainly not appropriate. A podcast is a very personal communication style. It's one-on-one. You're listening to me and you're probably on your own while you're listening to me. So I need to make this interactive and relaxed and like a conversation, but I also need to get across some points that I want you to understand and I want you to learn. And that's the reason that you're listening to it, obviously. You're not just addicted to the sound of my voice, I'm sure. Conversely, you shouldn't make your style too formal just because you want the audience to feel the depth of your feeling for the subject or how much you've prepared or how important a topic this is. A formal style is appropriate if you're comfortable talking in public that way. Now, I do another series of podcasts with a work associate of mine, and I find that when I leave her alone to present something rather than we have a conversational presentation, she becomes very formal. She takes it on as this is the speech I have to make while I'm recording, and that's just a reflection of her style, her natural style, when she's presenting information that is for people to learn, rather than having a conversation where she thinks that people might be listening in, which is what we do with the podcast that we do. Sometimes we feel that a formal and structured presentation is appropriate because it'll help our nerves. But unfortunately, that's not the case because mostly what it does is accentuate them to those who are listening, particularly when a formal style is not a reflection of the topic, the occasion, or how well the audience know you. So, how do you settle on the right style? And that's where practice comes in. So you've done your preparation. The next thing you really need to look at is practicing. And I mean practice, practice, practice. And even I practice, as you always should. And you can hear me rustling papers because I'm actually using notes for this talk as well. In a separate podcast, I'm going to talk about the practical side of practicing, but here I just want to talk about the theory. Just like an expert in any field, to be good at talking in public or making presentations, you need to practice. Some of us have skills that can be fine-tuned, and others will avoid any opportunity to talk in public because we believe we just can't do it. For a moment, I want you to think about a basic activity like tying your shoelaces. Although we have always had the tools to do this task, fingers and shoes, we had to learn how to do it, and then we had to practice it to become competent at the task. And is there only one way to tie your shoelaces? You try it with a group of friends and I think you'll be amazed at how many slightly different ways there are for this seemingly simple and obvious task. And in fact, there's a whole TED talk where a fellow who's in his 50s and believes that by that age he should have mastered one of life's tasks that involves tying shoes. And he discovers that for particular types of laces, he's actually been tying his shoes the wrong way all his life, and that's why they come undone. So have a look at that when you get an opportunity. It's a very entertaining little talk. But the bottom line, of course, is that we need to practice to become competent at that task. We weren't, from the time we first learnt, we weren't as fast and as good as we were 10 years later. And that there's lots of different ways. So again, there's lots of, if we look at it in terms of public speaking and presentations, there's lots of different ways that you can present information and practice the presenting of that information, which comes down to developing different styles for different bits of information. And practice doesn't have to be for a particular occasion. If you spend a bit of time in your car, let a practice talk run through your head. You'll find you'll get much better at putting your thoughts into a logical sequence if you're doing it for a little bit of every day, just like tying your shoelaces. I've found that you can't be comfortable with talking in public and public presentations unless you practice. Practice gives you the opportunity to develop your skills to be suitable or sufficient for the purpose, which was what we talk about when we talk about being competent in a task. Bottom line, you just need to keep in mind the saying that practice makes perfect, and that's been with us for centuries, so there must be something in it. Key points that I'd like you to take away from the conversation today, although it's been a bit one-sided, I'll grant you, is that you prepare by knowing how long you're going to talk or how long you're expected to talk. Prepare by matching the time that you have for your talk with an appropriate number of points that you can cover in that time. Prepare by understanding who you are talking to or who you are presenting to. Prepare by choosing the right style of talk for the occasion and for the audience. Practice the talk, practice the style, and just keep practicing. So that's the first part of preparing for your talk. I'm Kim Baillie, and this is Talking in Public.